In 350 BC, Aristotle sat down and wrote 4 rules that all money must follow. Not suggestions, not preferences, rules. 23 centuries later, a pseudonymous programmer released Bitcoin into the world, and whether by accident or obsession, it follows every single one of those rules. Aristotle may have described cryptocurrency before electricity existed, but here's the part that matters more than Bitcoin. Every currency in history that broke even one of those 4 rules eventually collapsed. Every single one. This is Money Origins, where ancient currencies explain the future of money. Worth saying up front, nothing here is financial advice, just a look at monetary history and the patterns inside it. What we're tracing today is a single idea that's been true for 5,000 years. There are only 4 properties that separate real money from things that pretend to be money. And by the end of this, you'll be able to test any currency, past, present, or future, against those properties in about 10 seconds. The first property Aristotle identified was durability. Money has to last. That sounds obvious until you realize how many civilizations got it wrong. Ancient China experimented with leather money, literal squares of deerskin stamped with royal seals. It worked, for a while. Then the leather rotted. Grain served as currency across Mesopotamia, until it got wet, or insects found it, or a warehouse fire turned an entire economy to smoke. And then there was gold. Gold doesn't corrode, it doesn't rust, it doesn't react with air or water or time. A gold coin pulled from a Roman shipwreck at the bottom of the Mediterranean looks almost the same as the day it sank 2,000 years ago. That's not poetry, that's chemistry. Gold sits in a unique position on the periodic table, stable enough to survive centuries, rare enough to hold value. Civilizations that chose gold as money didn't do it because it was pretty. They did it because it refused to die. Now here's where this gets interesting for anything digital. Can something with no physical form be durable? Bitcoin's ledger exists on tens of thousands of computers across the planet simultaneously. There's no single point of failure, no warehouse to flood, no vault to crack. As long as the network runs, the record survives. Durability, it turns out, doesn't require atoms. The second property is portability. Money has to move. For roughly 4,000 years, cowrie shells were the most widely used currency on Earth. Not gold, not silver, shells. They circulated across Africa, South Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific Islands. A geographic spread that no coin matched until the modern era. And the reason was portability. Cowrie shells were small, light, nearly impossible to counterfeit because of their complex natural structure, and easy to carry in pouches across trade routes that stretched thousands of miles. Gold had a portability problem. A meaningful amount of gold is heavy. Moving large sums meant armed guards, ships, and risk. This is actually why paper money was invented in Song Dynasty China around the 10th century. Not as an innovation for its own sake, but because merchants were tired of hauling strings of heavy copper coins across the empire. Paper was a portability hack. Bitcoin solved portability in a way that would have stunned every merchant on the Silk Road. $1 billion in Bitcoin weighs nothing. It crosses borders in minutes. You can carry it in your memory if you memorize 12 words. When we talk about Bitcoin versus ancient money, portability is where the gap between old and new becomes almost absurd. The third property, divisibility. Money has to break into smaller pieces without losing value. The most famous example might be the Spanish dollar, the piece of 8. That name isn't random. The coin was literally designed to be cut into 8 wedge-shaped pieces, each piece worth 1/8 of the whole. Pirates didn't just steal pieces of 8 for drama. They used them because the coins were engineered for splitting. You could buy a ship with a full coin, or a loaf of bread with a sliver. This is where cattle failed as money, even though several ancient cultures tried. You can't pay for a small item with half a cow. The animal is worth more alive than divided. Anything that can't scale down to small transactions hits a wall. Bitcoin divides down to 100 millionth of a single coin, a unit called a satoshi. That's a level of divisibility that no physical currency in history has matched. You could, in theory, pay for something worth a fraction of a penny. The properties of money that Aristotle outlined didn't specify how divisible, just that it must be. Bitcoin took that requirement and pushed it further than metal ever could. The fourth property is the one that governments have violated more than any other: scarcity. Money has to be hard to produce. Silver worked for centuries, partly because you couldn't just create more of it. Mining silver was slow, expensive, and dangerous. The supply grew gradually, which meant the value stayed relatively stable across generations. When Spain flooded Europe with silver from its South American mines in the 16th century, prices across the continent roughly tripled over 100 years. More supply, less value. The pattern is mechanical. Now consider what happens when scarcity disappears entirely. Weimar Germany, 1923. The government printed marks so aggressively that people burned banknotes for heat because the paper was worth more as fuel than as currency. Zimbabwe, 2008. Inflation hit 79 billion% in a single month. In both cases, the currency failed the scarcity test, and everything else followed. It didn't matter that the bills were durable, portable, and divisible. One broken property was enough. Bitcoin's supply is capped at 21 million coins.
That cap isn't a policy decision some committee can reverse. It's written into the code itself. Whether that makes it sound money in the long run is a debate people will have for decades. But the scarcity property, at least structurally, is satisfied in a way that no government-issued currency can guarantee. Keep in mind, none of this is a recommendation to buy or avoid anything. Markets are complex, and history rhymes more than it repeats. But here's what's worth sitting with. Aristotle's 4 rules, durability, portability, divisibility, scarcity, weren't invented. They were observed. They're a description of what money does when it actually works, tested across 5,000 years of trial and error. Technologies change, the materials change. The rules haven't, not once. And every currency that ignored even one of them is now something we study in the past tense. Aristotle never imagined a computer, but he described exactly what one would need to create if it wanted to build money from scratch. If this framework clicked for you, the next one goes deeper. Every currency that died, what ancient money teaches about crypto, traces the actual collapses, the moments where these properties broke in real time. That story picks up exactly where this one stops.